You see, beneath your feet right now, even as you sit and listen, there is an invisible conversation taking place. The soil, which to our hurried eyes appears mute and still, is in fact alive, with whispers, threads of white filaments, weaving through the dark, connecting root to root, life to life. The trees are talking, not with words, but with the slow language of exchange, sugars, signals, the faint electrical murmuring of being itself. And perhaps if we could tune our ears just a little finer, we would hear it, a steady breathing, a rhythm older than speech, the earth thinking. Now, this is not mere poetry. The botanists and the mycologists will tell you the same, that the forest is a single body, spread across many faces. Each tree is a cell, each leaf a heartbeat, and the mycelium beneath that fine web of fungal threads is its nervous system. It sends messages, shares food, warns of danger. The forest, you see, knows, but let us not stop at the scientific wonder of it. Let us ask the deeper question, the one that always tickles the philosopher's curiosity. If the forest thinks, what is it thinking through? And what are we, if not the forest dreaming itself as people? We have this peculiar tendency to imagine that we are separate, that I am here and you are over there, that the fern is different from the fox different from the man, and the man different from the sky. But when you walk in a forest, you realize the absurdity of this idea. The air you breathe is the breath of trees. The warmth you feel is the sun translated into green. You cannot take a single step without walking upon yourself. This web of life, this endless weaving of forms, it is the body of the cosmos. It has no central brain, no overseer, no control tower, and yet it works with a harmony that no human plan could ever rival. The mushrooms do not hold board meetings, the trees do not form governments, and yet somehow the rain comes, the roots drink, the leaves fall, and the soil renews itself. And we who imagine ourselves so clever are like a small patch of moss, suddenly conscious of itself, crying out, "What is my purpose?" while the mountain simply smiles and continues being. You see, the great illusion is that consciousness lives only in our skulls, as though the brain were a kind of little man sitting behind the eyes, watching the world through two round windows. But what if the brain is merely the latest bloom of an ancient intelligence, the same one that pulses through the mycelium, through the coral reef, through the spiral arms of galaxies? What if your thoughts are not yours at all, but the forest thinking itself in human language? So when you wander among the trees and feel that quiet sense of belonging, that mysterious calm that needs no reason, that is not sentimentality, that is recognition, the self meeting itself in another form. For beneath every step, beneath every fallen leaf, beneath every question you have ever asked about who you are or why you are here, there runs the same current, soft, silent, eternal, the whisper beneath the forest. You see, somewhere along the way, the human being made a very curious mistake. We forgot that we belong to the world, not that the world belongs to us. We began to think of ourselves as strangers upon the earth, visitors, managers, even owners, as though this grand and generous planet were merely a stage we rented for a lifetime. And yet, the forest remembers, the sea remembers, the wind blowing through the pines carries the laughter of something that has never once believed it was separate from itself. The great forgetting began the moment we said I. That tiny word, so small, so proud, split the seamless fabric of existence into me and everything else. And ever since, we have been trying desperately to stitch it back together. We build religions to return to God, philosophies to find meaning, machines to conquer nature, all of it born from the ache of an imagined distance. But there never was a distance, only the dream of one. You see, when a wave rises from the sea, it doesn't become something apart from the ocean. It's still the sea, moving in a particular pattern. And yet the wave says, I am a wave. I must protect myself from other waves. The ocean smiles, if oceans can smile because it knows the truth. There have never been any separate waves, only itself in motion. This is what has happened with us. We are the ocean, playing at being human. And this play, this divine game of hide and seek, is the very essence of creation. The universe hides itself in form to discover itself anew. Without forgetting, there could be no remembering. Without separation, no reunion. And so the great forgetting is not a sin, it is a strategy, a most magnificent trick through which the one becomes the many, through which the eternal delights in the adventure of time. We are not fallen, we are exploring. We are not lost, we are wandering home. But here's the trouble. When the game goes too long without laughter, when we take the masks of identity too seriously, we begin to suffer. We forget that it is a game. We forget that the roles we play, the profession, the nationality, the name, are costumes, not skin. And the deeper the forgetting, the louder the search for meaning becomes. We rush to find ourselves in mirrors made of money, power, approval. But mirrors only reflect what you expect to see. The true self can't be seen that way, because it's the one doing the seeing. You can't bite your own teeth. So what happens when a civilization of waves forgets the ocean? It builds walls against the tide. It declares war on the very water that sustains it. And then we wonder why we're so tired forever fighting against our own flow. But the forest, oh, the forest doesn't forget. It continues weaving, connecting, exchanging. It doesn't build fences around its roots or say, this sunlight is mine. It simply lives, which is to say, it remembers. The mycelium never thinks, I must achieve connection. It is connection. And that, perhaps, is what we're being invited to recall. That all our striving, our building, our worrying, our desperate attempts to make life make sense are the symptoms of forgetting. Life already makes sense. It is sense itself. The trick is not to figure it out, but to wake up within it. And the moment you do, perhaps sitting quietly beneath a tree, or standing in the shower, or hearing the laughter of a child, you'll feel it. That soft recognition, that sigh of remembrance. Ah, yes, this is what I am. This flow, this pattern, this breathing universe, I never left it. I simply forgot to notice. You know, people tend to think of intelligence as something that sits up here, taps his temple behind the eyes, between the ears, wrapped neatly in the skull like a secret treasure. But nature laughs at that. It has scattered intelligence everywhere. The trees think in green, the rivers think in flow, and the fungi, well, the fungi think in silence. Beneath the forest, there is a philosopher at work, a patient sage of the soil. The mycelium, those tiny threads of living light, stretch for miles beneath your feet, connecting tree to tree, sharing messages of nourishment and warning, passing information as though the forest were a single great brain. And isn't it marvelous? The trees are not competitors, they are collaborators. When one grows sick, the others feed it. When one stands in the sun, it sends sugar to the ones in shade. You see, the forest understands something that our clever species has nearly forgotten. Life does not survive by domination, but by conversation. In the human world, we imagine evolution as a battle survival of the fittest, tooth and claw, a grand competition. But the forest says otherwise. The forest says, no, my dear, it's not survival of the fittest, it's the flourishing of the fitting. Everything fits, everything flows, everything feeds, and is fed by something else. The fungus that digests the fallen tree is not destroying it. It's continuing it, translating wood into soil, soil into seed, seed into leaf, leaf into shade, shade into breath. The circle turns and turns, and nowhere does it say, this is me and that is not. And here's the delightful twist. This same pattern is happening in you. Your body is a forest of cells, a democracy of organisms, all cooperating, bacteria, neurons, mitochondria, each playing its part in the grand ecology called you. You are not one thing. You are a community pretending to be an individual. And if you look even closer, you'll see the mind behaves exactly like the mycelium. Thoughts branch, spread, connect, die, and give birth to new ones. The ideas you have today are nourished by ideas you forgot years ago. Some are your own. Some belong to everyone. The mind is not a private property, but a shared ecosystem of consciousness. That's why inspiration feels like discovery rather than invention. You don't make thoughts, you meet them. They emerge from the same deep hum that moves through everything, the hum of connection. You see, the forest doesn't have a king tree telling all the others what to do. There is no master plan. There is pattern without planner, order without authority. And this is what the mycelium teaches us, that the intelligence of life is not centralized, but distributed. It is a conversation, not a command. When we understand that, we begin to live differently. We stop trying to control the world and start participating in it. We stop demanding that nature obey our desires and begin to listen to its rhythm. And in that listening, something extraordinary happens. We realize that the very intelligence that builds galaxies is the same intelligence that grows mushrooms in the dark. So perhaps the fungus, humble and unnoticed, is the true philosopher of the earth. It works unseen, gives without asking, creates beauty from decay. It doesn't boast of its wisdom. And yet it holds the secret that sages and mystics have sought for millennia, that life is not a hierarchy, but a harmony. The fungal network beneath the forest floor is not separate from you. It is you in another costume. The same dance, different tempo. And if you close your eyes for a moment, truly close them, you might feel it, that quiet pulse beneath everything, the whisper of connection, the knowing that you were never a single being at all, but one thread in an infinite weave, the universe forever talking to itself in the language of life. When you look inside your own head, you imagine there's a little man in there, watching, deciding, steering this complicated contraption called me. But if you peer closer, you'll find no pilot, no homunculus, only patterns of firing, loops of rhythm, currents of life. Thought itself behaves like a living forest. Each idea is a root, each memory a thread, each emotion a burst of fertile rain. Our minds, you see, are not solid fortresses, but living gardens. Neurons reach out like fungal filaments, touching, retreating, forming new pathways as trees do through their underground web. What we call thinking is not a command from a throne, it's the forest listening to itself. You might notice, when you're still enough, how thoughts grow of their own accord. You don't sit there saying, think, any more than the tree says, leaf. They arise, intertwine, and dissolve back into silence. The trouble begins only when we believe we are the gardener rather than the garden. Then we start pruning and labeling every branch. This thought is good, this one is bad. This feeling belongs, that one doesn't. And before we know it, the forest of the mind has been turned into a plantation, orderly, efficient, and very, very dull. But life doesn't flourish in straight lines. It wants to wander. It wants to play. So the mycelium of mind will always find its way back, sneaking through the cracks of control, reminding you that the wild is wiser than the warden. Now imagine this. The mycelium under the soil doesn't simply connect trees. It mediates balance. When one area grows too greedy, another feeds it just enough to restore harmony. So too within you. The unconscious, those vast shadowy realms beneath awareness, is not a dungeon of repressed monsters. It's a mycelial underworld, quietly redistributing the energy of being, making sure no single thought consumes the whole field. When you sleep, dream, or fall into reverie, You are visiting that underworld. You are the forest speaking to itself in images. You are the mushroom fruiting in the night to release new spores of possibility. And every insight you have, every flash of understanding comes from below. You don't invent it. It pushes up from the dark like a fungus after rain. Suddenly there it is, perfect, complete, inevitable. That's why true creativity always feels like discovery rather than manufacture. The mind didn't make it. The mind remembered what the deeper self already knew. The irony, of course, is that the more you chase thoughts, the less you understand them. You can't grasp the network by pulling on one strand. Only when you relax, when you let the web reveal itself, do you see that your consciousness is not confined to the skull at all. It stretches across relationships, language, time, culture, just as the mycelium stretches beneath the forest floor. You think with your friends, with your ancestors, with the world, and if the forest of mind mirrors the forest of earth, then enlightenment is not a lightning bolt from above, but a recognition from below. It is the realization that you were never just the thinker, you were the whole system thinking. So when you sit quietly and watch your thoughts, don't try to trim them, don't try to name them, let them grow, intertwine, decay, and feed new ones. For this, too, is nature's way. The mind, like the forest, is a sacred compost heap where even confusion becomes fertile. And somewhere in that humus of thought, amid the roots of your being, something ancient stirs the sense that you are not the mind at all, but the living awareness in which the mind mushrooms and fades. That awareness, my friends, is the soil of everything. Now, every so often, nature allows herself a little trick, a way for the universe to look into its own eyes. Sometimes this happens quietly, through meditation, or love, or grief. And sometimes it happens through a mushroom. The ancients called them teacher plants, sacred medicines, or simply the flesh of the gods. To modern scientists, they are a chemical, a molecule that tickles the brain in peculiar ways. But to those who have met them sincerely, they are doorways into the vast interior of being. You see, the mushroom does not give you something you lack. It removes what you never needed. It loosens the knots of the mind, the constant labeling, judging, measuring, and for a few sacred hours, the curtain falls. The actor leaves the stage. And there, in the silence behind the performance, something begins to glow, something utterly familiar, and yet never truly seen. It is as if the forest itself were looking out through your eyes. People say, "I lost my ego," as though that were a tragedy. But what they lose is not their self. It is the costume of separateness. The little voice that insists on controlling everything, the constant chatter of what's next, what's next, what's next, that voice falls silent, and what remains is astonishingly peaceful. You discover that life doesn't need your supervision to go on being marvelous. The river flows, the breath breathes, the trees stand without a reason to stand. And you freed from the compulsion to explain simply are. Now, one must be careful here. The point of these experiences is not to get lost in the fireworks, not to chase visions like a cosmic tourist. The true miracle is not that you see colors in the dark, but that you see the dark at all that awareness itself can perceive without the lens of identity. When the ego dissolves, what takes its place is not emptiness, but intimacy. You realize you were never in the world, you are the world. The same current that moves in the veins of a leaf moves in you. The heartbeat you feel is the rhythm of the stars. And yet, here's the divine joke. After the mushroom fades, after the great revelation, you still have to wash the dishes. You still pay the bills, walk the dog, answer the phone. The universe, you see, loves the ordinary. It hides enlightenment in the very act of living. That's why the wise don't stay on mountaintops or in laboratories. They return to the marketplace, to the kitchen, to the laughter of children, because the sacred is not a place, it's a way of seeing. The mushroom may open your eyes, but it cannot make you look. That part is up to you. What the sacred chemistry shows us is that consciousness is infinitely creative. It can dream itself as a galaxy, or as a human, or as a spore in the soil. And in every form, it plays the same game, to forget itself just long enough to be surprised by its own reflection. So whether it's a molecule, a mantra, or a moment of stillness that opens you, remember, awakening is not an achievement. It is not something you acquire like a degree or a medal. It's a remembering. It's the moment the wave realizes it has always been the ocean. And the beauty of it, all the cosmic humor of it, is that you never had to travel anywhere to find this. You were never asleep. You were dreaming that you were asleep. And the mushroom, the meditation, the miracle, they're just the gentle nudge that says, wake up, dear one, you've been home all along. You see, my dear friends, when you look closely enough at life, the separation between out there and in here begins to dissolve. The skin is not a boundary, it is a bridge. You are not a lonely ego wandering through a foreign world. You are the world in the shape of a human being, temporarily exploring itself from the inside. We have been taught that nature is a thing and it a vast, indifferent machine composed of lifeless parts. But this, you see, is one of the grandest misunderstandings of our age. Nature is not a mechanism, it's an organism. And you are not standing outside it, you are one of its expressions, just as a wave is an expression of the sea. We say, I came into this world, but that's not true. You came out of it. The earth is not your environment. It is your mother, your body, your continuous unfolding. The very minerals in your bones were cooked in the heart of ancient stars, scattered by supernovae, gathered again into this little blue world, and awakened as you. So when you look at the trees, you are looking at your own lungs turned inside out. When you breathe, the forest breathes with you. It exhales what you inhale, and inhales what you exhale, an endless conversation between leaf and lung, sky and blood. Yet, curiously, we act as though this conversation were optional, as though we could take without giving, consume without returning. We pave the soil, drain the rivers, strip the forests, and call it progress. But progress toward what? To tear the web that supports you is not evolution, it's amnesia. The ecological crisis is not a crisis of the planet, it's a crisis of perception. The earth will recover. She has time. But we who dream of being separate are forgetting that to harm the forest is to harm our own lungs. To poison the ocean is to poison our own blood. We don't need to save the planet. We need to remember that we are the planet saving itself through our awakening. You see, when you truly feel this, not as a belief, but as a direct experience, compassion stops being a moral duty. It becomes a kind of instinct. You no longer protect the forest because it's beautiful or profitable or endangered. You protect it because you feel it as yourself. The bird's song is your song. The river's flow is your bloodstream. And here's the lovely irony. When you stop trying to dominate nature, she begins to guide you. She becomes your teacher, your mirror, your lover. You learn from the mushroom how to turn decay into nourishment. You learn from the wind how to move without clinging. You learn from the ocean how to let every wave rise and fall without fear. This is the ecology of being. It is not about fixing the world. It's about remembering the world is not broken. It is about living as if every step you take were the earth walking on itself. Every breath a prayer between worlds. When you see that the forest breathes in you, you stop asking, how can I save nature? And start asking, how can I live so that life continues to sing through me? Because, you see, the point was never to conquer the world, it was to dance with it. The goal was never to reach heaven by escaping earth. It was to realize that heaven has always been here, growing quietly through the cracks in your certainty. The ecology of being is the remembering of relationship, that sacred conversation between the human and the whole. And when that memory returns, not as an idea but as an experience, the walls fall away, the fear subsides, and a deep peace emerges, the peace of belonging. You were never a stranger here. You were never an intruder in creation. You were always the forest's own thought, blooming for a little while as a person. Now, let us talk of death, the great taboo, the unspeakable end that everyone secretly knows will come but pretends belongs to someone else. Yet nature, in her effortless wisdom, never hides it. She celebrates it. The mushroom, that quiet priest of decay, turns every fallen leaf, every dead root, into the food of future life. And perhaps this is the greatest teaching the fungi offer, that death is not the opposite of life, but its companion. Two sides of the same coin, flipping endlessly in the hand of the universe. We humans, of course, have a peculiar fear of endings. We imagine that when the body stops, the show is over, the curtain falls, and the lights go out forever. But nature shows us something far more subtle. The leaf does not die, it transforms. It dissolves into the soil, and from that soil rises another leaf, and another. The old becomes the new by way of surrender. You see, in every handful of dirt there is an entire resurrection happening, the atoms of yesterday's body building tomorrow's blossom. And the cosmos laughs, because it has never lost anything. It only recycles. When you grasp that, death stops being a tragedy and becomes a kind of music, a rhythm, a pulse, a deep bass line to the melody of existence. For life is not a straight line from birth to oblivion. It is a circle, a spiral, a dance. The great compost heap of the universe is not a cemetery. It is a womb. It receives what has fallen only to bring forth what has never yet been seen. The mycelium knows this. It digests death into life, turns rot into radiance. In the forest, nothing is wasted, and in truth, nothing ever can be. So when you weep for what you have lost, the earth listens with compassion, for she knows the secret. Nothing is truly lost. It has only changed its costume. The beloved who has died, the season that has ended, the version of yourself that you've outgrown, they have all returned to the soil of being, preparing to bloom again in another form. To resist this flow is to suffer. To trust it is to awaken. For the self that fears death is like a leaf trembling at autumn's edge, not realizing that it was never separate from the tree. The life you call yours is the earth's own heartbeat. And when that beat quiets, it does not end, it expands, joining the greater rhythm that moves stars and galaxies alike. The universe, you see, composts even identity. It takes the I that clings, breaks it down into its elements, love, curiosity, wonder, and spreads them across infinity. That is why no one truly dies. They simply return to the great circulation of being. So do not mourn too long at the gates of change. Step through them. The fungi teach us how to bow gracefully to transformation. They show us that to decay is not to be diminished, but to be renewed. Every life feeds another. Every ending fertilizes a beginning. And maybe, just maybe, this is the real enlightenment. To see that what you are is not a person passing through the world, but the world passing through a person. You are the soil dreaming of flowers, the cosmos composting itself into consciousness. When you know this, death loses its teeth. It becomes not a devourer, but a gardener. And you, like the mushroom, begin to smile. Because you finally understand that the end is just the earth turning itself inside out, whispering softly. Again, you see, once you've understood that life renews itself through death, you begin to notice something even more astonishing. That everything, from the falling leaf to the birth of a galaxy, is guided by an intelligence that has no thinker behind it. The Taoists called it Wu Wei, the action that happens without forcing. The Hindus named it Lila, the divine play. And if you listen carefully, you can feel it right now, humming underneath every heartbeat, moving your lungs without permission, spinning the earth beneath your feet. No one is pushing this. There is no engineer behind the cosmos, no manager, no committee. Yet it all works exquisitely, impossibly well. The planets keep their dance, the cells divide with precision, the rain falls where it must, and you, imagining yourself a separate observer, are the very intelligence by which it all unfolds. Isn't it curious how we've divided life into doer and deed, cause and effect, observer and observed? But in truth, these divisions are useful fictions, ways for the universe to talk to itself about itself. Just as a spider spins a web from its own body, reality spins meaning from its own movement. There is a pattern, yes, but no planner. There is structure, but no architect. And this, you see, is far more magnificent than the idea of a cosmic puppet master. For it means that everything that exists is participating in the intelligence of the whole. The mushroom, the moon, the magpie. And you, all of you, are thoughts in the same infinite mind. And when you see that, you stop struggling to control it. You begin to dance it. Because you realize you never were the dancer, you were the dance itself. Look at the forest again. No tree knows the plan, yet the forest thrives. No root commands another, yet the network nourishes all. Intelligence is not a hierarchy descending from the top, it's a conversation emerging from everywhere. So too with you, your heartbeat, your laughter, your intuition, all these are the cosmos thinking locally. But the mind resists. It says, if I let go, everything will collapse. Ah, but has the universe ever collapsed when you stop thinking? The stars don't need your supervision to shine. The tide doesn't need your permission to rise. The breath you call yours has been moving in and out of being since time began. The great secret is that life is self-playing. The cosmos performs itself for the sheer joy of experience, like a musician playing for the love of sound. You are one of its melodies. The music doesn't ask where it's going. It doesn't hurry to the final note. It dances because dancing is what it is. When you understand that, control turns into curiosity, and fear melts into fascination. You no longer need to demand meaning from life because you realize meaning is what life is doing right now, through you. So the question, what is the purpose of existence, becomes as funny as asking, what's the purpose of a song? The song doesn't go anywhere, it flows somewhere. It doesn't achieve, it reveals. And the wonder of it all is that the same intelligence that arranges galaxies also arranges your thoughts, your breath, your laughter. There's no division between the cosmic and the personal. The intelligence that shapes the stars is the same that ties your shoelaces. When you surrender to that realization, the world stops being a problem to solve and becomes a mystery to participate in. You don't have to figure out the pattern. You are the pattern. You don't have to believe in God. You are what God is doing right now, pretending to be you. And so the play continues infinitely, effortlessly, life unfolding through its own delight, pretending, discovering, dissolving, renewing, not by plan, not by command, simply because the one thing reality cannot resist is the joy of being itself. You see, every dance must find its still point, every song its final breath. And so, after all the seeking and the singing, life draws us gently back to the quiet center from which it began. We imagine silence as the absence of sound, just as we imagine emptiness as the absence of meaning. But in truth, silence is not nothing. It is everything before it begins to take shape. It is the fertile void, the background that makes the music possible. Without the pauses, no note could be heard. Without the space between stars, no light could travel. We spend so much time trying to fill the silence with words, with thoughts, with plans. We fear it, as though quiet were a kind of death. Yet all the while, it is the very thing holding us. Like the sea holds the wave, like the sky holds the clouds, silence holds our lives. When you finally grow tired of controlling, of improving, of explaining, there comes this strange relief, an exhale that says, I don't need to keep doing. And in that moment you hear it, the hum beneath everything, the steady rhythm that was there long before you arrived and will continue long after you depart. This is not the silence of absence. It is the silence of presence, the silence that listens through your ears, that looks through your eyes, that breathes through your lungs. It is what you really are when all the roles are set down. And it's funny, isn't it? We spend lifetimes trying to find peace, never realizing that peace was the foundation all along. The noise of the mind is just the surface weather of a vast, calm sea. The storms come and go, but the deep remains unmoved. When you rest in that depth, the whole world softens. You stop demanding that experience justify itself. You no longer need to prove, persuade, or achieve. You simply participate in the unfolding, like a leaf drifting on the river of being. The sages called this returning to the source. But it's not a journey through miles or lifetimes. It's the distance between one thought and the next. Just there, in the pause, you discover that there never was a separation to overcome. The silence was never gone. You were simply talking over it. And so, when you fall quiet, not as a discipline, but as a natural ripening, you notice the miracle. Life continues perfectly well without your interference. The breath breathes. The heart beats. The earth spins. The cosmos hums its eternal tune. And you, who thought yourself the conductor, discover that you were the music all along. So perhaps, in the end, awakening is not a thunderclap of realization, but the gentle sigh of surrender. Not an achievement to boast of, but a quiet remembering. The rediscovery that you were never apart from the symphony, never outside the forest, never separate from the silence. You are the silence that sings, the stillness that moves, the nothing that gives rise to everything. And when you see this not as an idea, but as an intimacy, the mind bows in gratitude and falls silent. Not because it has been defeated, but because, for the first time, it has understood. And so, after all the wandering and wondering, after the rising and falling of thought and form, we return to the simplest truth that life was never waiting to begin. It has been happening all along, perfectly, effortlessly, through you, as you. Perhaps this is why the mushroom smiles. It knows the secret that the rest of us are still pretending to forget, that the purpose of being is simply being. The mushroom does not hurry to grow. It unfolds at the exact pace of the rain. It doesn't seek enlightenment. It is enlightenment, quietly dissolving what has finished and giving it back to the whole. You see, awakening is not a lightning strike from heaven. It is a soft germination, a spore opening in the dark. It happens not when you reach for it, but when you stop reaching, when you allow the fertile silence of existence to do its work. And that's the lovely paradox, isn't it? All our striving, our searching, our desperate attempts to find meaning, they were never wrong. They were simply part of the unfolding, the journey of a seed pushing toward the light, forgetting for a time that it already is light in another form. Now the mind may ask, but what do I do with this? And the answer, my dear friends, is delightfully simple. You live, you breathe, you laugh. You let life live you, because that's what it's been doing since the beginning. When you stop trying to control the river, you discover it's been carrying you exactly where you were meant to go. When you stop arguing with the wind, you feel it lift you. When you stop searching for God, you realize you never stopped being divine. The mushroom does not proclaim its wisdom, yet through it the forest renews itself. Be like that quiet, humble, nourishing the world by your mere presence. You don't have to shout your realization from mountaintops. The truth is contagious without words. Like a spore carried on the breeze, it spreads naturally through the gentle act of being, and that, perhaps, is the meaning of grace. It's not a prize, not a reward, not something earned. It's the effortless continuity of life expressing itself through every form, even the fleeting one called you. When you see this clearly, something inside relaxes forever. You no longer crave certainty. You trust the flow. You no longer clutch at tomorrow. You bloom today. You no longer try to hold on to joy. You become porous enough to let joy move through you, like air through leaves. So the sermon ends where it began, in the forest, where the whisper beneath your feet is still speaking. The same network that once connected root to root now connects heart to heart, thought to thought, being to being. And if you listen closely, not with your ears, but with your being, you will hear it. That quiet pulse beneath everything. It doesn't say, you must know. It doesn't say, you must become. It simply says, you are. You are the mycelium of consciousness, the song of the soil, the laughter of the stars. You are life looking at itself through human eyes and realizing, perhaps for the first time, that it was never separate, never incomplete, never alone. And when that realization ripens as naturally as spores ripen on the breeze, you do not disappear. You simply smile. You breathe. And in that simple act, the whole universe breathes with you. Because, after all, it always has.